Alrighty, welcome back. I'm your man, Bad Chad, and Queen Jolene's on the camera, and we are on air. Today's going to be controversial, and the reason being is because I'm going to give you my belly button, and what that is my opinion on epoxy. I'm going to epoxy something, and then I'm going to paint something. I'm going to show you when I use epoxy, and you obviously know when I do not use epoxy. But what's going to happen is I've got the hinges for the trunk of the car, of the Thunderbird. The hinges are not painted. They've been sandblasted and they're hanging in the paint room. I want to put some paint on them so then I can apply the trunk lid. They'll be painted, apply the trunk lid, and then we can make it fit and all that sort of stuff. Have not had it on there to fit, have not drilled any holes in the hinges to pin it, to make it fit so we can take it off and on when we paint it. We showed you that on the hood. When the hood was put on, we took a 1/8 drill bit and we drilled 2 spots by the bolts, and then we'd be able to shove a rivet or whatever in there to line it back up again. But where these are sandblasted, if you're restoring a car, you want to do a real nice job on mostly everything. You would never, or I don't think you would never want to come in and just paint them. You would want to prime them. So basically that's when I use epoxy. And the reason being is, if I come in here with my primer that I primed the car with, I prime them. What has to happen is I have to wait for them to dry. And then I got to take them and sit down over there with a piece of sandpaper, a piece of 220, try to sand them all up, and then hit them with a piece of 400, and sand them so they're all smooth, and then I can hang them back up and then paint them. So you'll have to ask yourself, how fast can you, well, it's going to take at least a day and a half, because you got to come in and prime them. Then you got to wait for it to dry. Then you got to go out there and sand them. Then you got to get them hung back up again, and then you got to mix the paint and paint them. Well, this is where I'm going to use epoxy. I'm going to go in and mix my epoxy up. I'm going to put a light coat of epoxy on, EPOXY Primer they call it. And then I'm going to primer sealer. It's an epoxy primer sealer. I'm going to epoxy them. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to wait 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm going to paint them without sanding them. That's what I feel epoxy's for. That's my opinion. You can think whatever you want to think. That's my opinion. Same as if I took the trunk lid off and had it upside down. I had sanded it all, had it looking really nice. Had a few bare spots of bare metal places in it. I didn't want to prime the hole underneath of it to sand it. And over there where I got with the trunk lid now I got to sand it with a piece of sandpaper, and it's going to take time to resand it to paint it. But the trunk lid needed work, and I needed primer to help me make the finish that I need to paint it. If you had a trunk lid that was amazing, but you had a few places in bare metal showing, and you wanted to paint it, what you would do is you instead of grabbing your primer like that and priming your places and then waiting to sand it, because you sand your primer before you paint, so it'll stick, you would grab your epoxy, you would epoxy your places, and then you could go out and get your paint ready, come right back in and paint it. That's what I'm saying it's for. Another thing too, this epoxy, it's not made for build. That's my opinion. I'm only giving you my opinion. You take it if you like it, throw it away if you don't. But this stuff is not for build. If you start building this stuff up, you're going to have to ask old Jim Patterson, Jimbo, ask him, watch it, sweetheart, you're going to have to ask him what happens when you start building this stuff up and then you paint. You're going to have issues, because this stuff is going to work underneath your paint, just like Jimbo had. Also, if you take a car and you strip it down to bare metal, well, I got to epoxy it. Well, if you epoxy it and you start covering it up, make sure that you know if you wait beyond the period of time that it has to flash, that means you got to sand it before you apply something else. So if I put epoxy on this and I let it set for a day, when I come back in, you got to sand that to apply anything over it. And the reason being is it has cured, and it will not adhere to something else unless you sand it. So if you're going to come in and epoxy your car, epoxy it all and then walk away for a day or so, you got to sand that epoxy before you put the primer on it or paint on it, because it will fall off. You can ask people, and it happens if you do that. When you look at some of the cars that brand new, when they come out and the paint was coming off, well, they must have primed them and let them set for a while, and it did not adhere when they painted them, and the paint started pulling off them, basically. Also, what am I going to say also for? Also, like I said, this stuff is not meant for build. It's not meant for build. So if I come in and I spray the corner panel and epoxy, it's not going to rust. Bullshit. Throw it outside, and if you apply it properly, if you throw it outside, it'll rust, right? Like, it won't take long, it will rust. If you're inside, sure, you got a little epoxy on, you're saving, I guess, because you think the moisture in your shop, the metal's rusting. Well, that's fine if you got it in your shop, but if you apply it right, you put a little epoxy on it, put a little coat on it, set it outdoors, it'll rust just like that. If you put the primer on it, if I throw this car outdoors, I do not think that it would rust anywhere where the primer is. And the basic reason is because the water's not going to go through it. But the epoxy applied properly, it will rust. Let's do it. Let's put some epoxy on the hinges, and then we'll put some paint on. And the reason I'm going to do it this way, I've already explained it. I do not have to sit down and sand them after I've put the primer on. Every other primer, you have to sit down, wait till it dries, and then you sand it. And I'm feeling this stuff is mixed 2 to 1, 2 parts of this and 1 part of the activator. So I'm going to go 2 to 1 on the stick. It's 2 to 1 up there. So what happens is I'm going to go to the 1, so that's the 2 part, and then I'm going to go to the 1 on that side, that's the 1 part. So it's 2 to 1. So I'm going to have that much epoxy to that much activator. So basically, what I'm thinking is, this stuff was not, well, it's meant to get ahead, I guess, to be able to move forward quicker than as if you were priming and painting and sanding. I would say it's more for the collision end of things than the restoration thing. And the reason being on the restoration thing, it's not about how quick you can get it done, it's how nice you can get it done. Well, I guess you want to get it done quick also, but you really want to do the best job you can when you're doing a restoration. Also with collision, I guess, everybody wants to do the best job they can. I hope they do. But this right here would allow me to prime something and then paint it the exact same day with no sandpaper, no work, skip all that stuff, and that would make someone happy. I'm going to get a little screwdriver and knock a hole in that. I think that the Thunderbird looks factory. I do. I think it looks very factory. And I hope that you do too. And if you don't, that's okay. I think the back window looks amazing with the side window. I think that's really going to look nice with the area of black painted around the back. It's going to look amazing. The short roof looks good. I think they should have made one. But then again, just my opinion. And like I say every time, take it if you like it, and if you don't like it, don't take it. Like, it's kind of, yeah. And also, just because if someone disagrees with me, doesn't mean we can't be friends. Because you can do it your way, and I can do it my way. But I want to explain how I do it. And the reason being is, that's what we do. We let you know, basically, the truth of the matter. So I have not got a whole bunch mixed up, probably mixed up too much of stuff. You know, to do something, this stuff is, you don't have to use very much of it to get done what you want to get done. And the reason being is because it's meant to go on, a thin coat for adhesion, like your plastic bumpers and that sort of stuff. Sometimes the plastic bumpers are hard to make paint stick to. Well, that's where the old epoxy comes in. Put a little primer on it. Instead of sanding them plastic bumpers and priming with the polyester, you'd have to wait a day or two, and then 200, 400, and then paint it. Well, the plastic bumpers, you can throw a light coat of epoxy on it, 15 minutes, you go back in, start spraying your paint. That's what I'm thinking. But there's, like I say, there's generally nothing in a restoration that you would want to prime without sanding and painting. Where the hinges are trunk hinges, and they are, you know, they're trunk hinges. The only people that are, you know, are going to see the hinges generally would be somebody that, oh, I forgot my mask. Sorry there for a sec, sweetheart. You want to hold that gun for a second? Jolene looks amazing today. Jolene's going today to get her her makeup done professionally. And this lady that's doing her makeup is making quite a name for herself. And she's going to do Jolene's makeup. She's big on TikTok, is she not? Yeah. I can't imagine Jolene looking any better than she will or does, but we'll see. We will see. Oh, yeah. Thanks, sweetheart. You're the best. Get in there and paint that, she says. I've already blown them off. They were sandblasted. So we took a little 220 sandpaper and took the coarseness off it, because it felt like a cat's tongue when you sandblast something. So we have sanded them a little bit before we started to get the, you know, the best texture, you know, as we can for no priming and no sanding, but they're trunk hinges. Little job, little gun. They probably have enough on it, but I have a little bit in the gun, so I might as well put it on. That stuff is strong. Woo! Easy to mess on this sort of stuff. Easy to mess. Good. I'm going to use this epoxy right here in a couple little places. And the reason being is it needs a little primer on that bare metal, but I'm going to sand this car, so I'm feeling like it's okay. Also, you were sanding car down? You were sanding your car down? You went through in a couple places? You can't. You want to get some primer on it? You would go get some epoxy. You cover it up like that, and then you paint your car. No sanding, no nothing. Just continue on. Basically, what I'm telling you. And it's only my opinion. See, and I didn't use very much. I got some left there, kind of probably shouldn't have made that much. I'm going to go take a look and see if I can use it somewhere else. I don't really want to spray it on the trunk lid right at the present moment. I got quite a few dents in that trunk lid. It was kind of deceiving. Basically, I'm just going to throw it, I guess. There's no sense me putting this on if I don't need it. It has no build factor, and it's not that much. I'll clean the gun, get ready. And it's just a little bit. Just don't want to waste it. But we done what we had to do. Somebody suggested a filter over top in front of the fan. I think I'm going to do that because I don't want to screw the fan up. That's what happened last time. All the paint, all the years of painting, the paint gathered on the fan, and then it screwed the fan up. So I'd like to have a filter in front of the fan. It'll still pull, obviously. Just like to have a filter in front of the fan so it does not gather with paint. Now I have that rag. The rag's right there. I don't spend a whole lot of time cleaning my gun. I don't like to spend the time for it. I've got now I should have probably, you would use a filter on, if you were painting on your car, something really important, you would filter the epoxy so you did not get no dirt in it. Where it's the trunk hinges, I'm not that worried about it. Not really. Not that worried about it. I actually seen some places I missed on the I should probably do it again. I've seen a couple places I missed on the. Come take a look. You can see how I'm kind of thin right there, or I can see that I'm thin right there. But it's got a little bit on it. I guess I'm not too concerned. They go right on their way underneath here. They're not that visible. They go way underneath here, so we'll just continue on. Because if I put it in the gun, or if I put the epoxy back in the gun, that means I got to clean the gun again. Not going there. I'm gonna open this bad boy up so I can get a shake on the paint. This is just a urethane paint. It's probably the cheapest. It's probably the most reasonable price paint that you can get, probably. It's a single stage. We've got a hardener. I like using it's Nason's paint. I like using the Nason's clear coat hardener with my urethane paint. I find that it just gives it a little more, just gives it a little bit more. What I'm thinking, shine and hardness. Just gives it a little bit more. Haven't got any reducer. Didn't have any reducer. I don't have any reducer, but a friend of mine was going to the Environment Depot, Chris Hines, and he dropped off some reducers, because reducers generally reducer, and where the trunk is, I'm just going to throw that reducer in the paint and be happy. If you were doing something that like if you were doing something collision or high end, you would want to make sure that you had your right reducer and you filtered everything before you're painting. I'm just doing the process because I want paint on the hinges before I put them in. I'm not looking for, I'm just looking for them to be painted black, and I'm priming them before I paint them. I guess when I start using filters, it will be when we start painting. That's when I'll start using the filters and being as careful as possible when we start painting the body of the car. Let's go here for a second. The trunk lid. I've got the trunk lid flipped over. And I'm doing the dents that I'm finding in the trunk lid. There seems to be quite a few of them. I feel like welded up the 2 holes in the back where the bird went on. We're deleting that. Now, if you wanted to, I wouldn't suggest it because your body work would have to be absolutely perfect, but you could epoxy that, no sanding, and then paint it. Well, basically, I would not do that because I want to get the primer on it to block over and to make sure that I got things looking good in the guide coat and make sure I'm doing things right, and we can sand it up to that 400 or the 600, whatever kind of paint you want, you would sand it to that application. But you can see that the car is looking really good. The door's got to be adjusted out a little bit more in the front. The roof looks really good. You would never know that roof is cut in half and welded back together. I'm liking this way better than going, I like this part here. I'm liking this piece here way better than it going up to the back window. I'm liking the area of paintwork that's going to be around the back window. I like that. The port windows I like. There are some fitment issues with the other side with the fender skirt and the quarter panel. There's some fitment issues going on there. There's some pinholes in places where I've done some. You can see a pinhole here, that's quite a pinhole. Like you can see that stuff like that. And I find after you prime it, you really can see it really good. So that's going to have to be fixed. We got maybe a couple up here that are going to have to be fixed. There's a few all over it, like in places where the filler was. A few there, pinholes are going to have to be fixed. And when I was in Napa yesterday, I looked and I was looking for, what was I looking for? I was looking for the epoxy because I just wanted to epoxy it and paint. I found some polyester putty. It was a can of that big around and that tall, that big around. 82 bucks. So you put tax on that, you're printing $100 for a can of that. And I'm gonna print her $100 for a can of that. If I done it like everybody else, I would probably put to skim that quarter panel, because someone's put a quarter panel on it, to skim that quarter panel, to skim that roof, to skim all that, to skim that, and skim all the trunk lid and skim all the hood. Think how many cans you would be into, you know, because what happens is when you start using that stuff, what happens is, well, if the person don't get their body fill close, if they don't get it right, if they don't get it right, sometimes what happens is they'll jump right into that polyester putty, and I'll fix it with that. Well, then if you start getting that polyester putty and you start putting that on 2 and 3, 4, 5 different times, because it keeps not doing the thing that you want it to do, you really can get into a lot of money for that stuff. I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, to cover that whole front end with polyester putty, because I fixed all this or made the gap look better, which it does. Come over and take a look at the gap, sweetheart. The gap looks really good on the front of the hood now. We took quite a bit of gap out of it. But if you skimmed all that front of that hood and all there, all the holes that we done, we delete the holes here, deleted all the holes in the side of the door, we took them out of it. You start covering all that stuff with that 2-part putty, really the price keeps going up and up and up and up. I'm not sure what the epoxy cost. I didn't quite look at the slip. Is it in my pocket? Look at that. Just making a little time. Epoxy. $72.90 for the epoxy. I guess that's what I get it for. But the actual price is $81.90. And then you get the hardener, the activator gift, so your exact same thing, or a little bit more actually. You're up into, you're almost $200 just for that and that. And it is what it is. I mean, there's no big secret. You have to pay for what you use, but let's face it, if if you're using things that are unnecessary for your project, then it runs more money. You can run, and nowadays, depends on what you want, what you want to do, I guess. If you think more money makes a better job, go for it. If you think the money makes a better job, go for it. I'm going to. You want me to take the mask off? Knocking on it? Okay, well, let's mix up some paint and then we'll go from there. So I haven't got my glasses on. Do. 4 parts paint, 1 hardener, and 2 reducer. So I'm nowhere near going to put 4 parts of paint, or I'm going to put 4 parts of paint. I am going to mix it that way, but I'm only going to need a little bit of paint to paint what's going on there. That gun full would easily paint that 3 times, no doubt in my mind. This paint has not been open for a long time, but I don't throw anything away, so. And it's good paint. There's nothing wrong with it, that's for sure. Alrighty. There's the mixture I want right there. 4, 1, 2. I'm going to pick the amount I want in there, and then I'm going to apply it. So I'm thinking I want to go around the 2 area. Around the 1 area, that gives me that much paint in the bottom of that. If I go do the 1, that would be the paint. That would be the hardener. So I go to there to the paint, and I go there with the hardener, and then I go there with the reducer. If I go there, then I'm going to have that much paint in there. I should have lots of paint to paint them hinges, because I'm going to put 2, 3, 4 coats on it, probably, no doubt in my mind. Also, a lot of people say, well, if you mix in these things here, it changes the mixture. Sure does. And I'm going to tell you something. It does not bother me, or it doesn't affect me, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I enjoy my paint a little thinner than what they ask for. And what they ask for is a suggestion. Like, basically, you can mix your paint any damn way you want to. It's your paint. It's like that old saying goes, it's my party and I cry if I want to. But you can mix your paint any way you want to. And I like it a little thin when it comes to spraying paint. And the reason I like it thin is because I find it goes on better. Bum, bum, bum. We're going to have 1 hardener. So if your paint's thicker, I basically feel like sometimes it can get orange peely on you if your paint's thick. You have to think of a spray bomb. That's what I generally think of. When you take a spray bomb and you spray, I'll just leave that for a second. You take a spray bomb and spray a spray bomb. The paint's really thin. You can really actually get a quite nice job with a spray bomb. What would be the difference with car paint? Be the same thing. If you want to mix it really thick, go ahead. I like it thin. And this stuff is all a suggestion. Like, they say use, now I've got some things there. I probably should use a filter with this stuff because I am getting, and I might use a filter with this because I'm getting little issues there. Some reducer. This stuff was given to me. I'm going to use it. What the hey? Hoping it works. As long as it's not gasoline. It's reducer. We should be fine. It's a medium reducer. So my mixture is not completely correct with what they exactly want. And like I said before, it doesn't matter to me. Or actually, I like it thin. Some people like 2 sugar in their coffee, and some people like 1. Me and Jolene don't like none. And that's basically the same thing with paint. You have to put your hardener in, yes you do. And you should, reduce it somewhat because you're going to have an issue, but you can mix it any way you want to. I like it so it's really, really thin. Just like when I'm spraying the gun, I like high pressure. The reason I like high pressure is because I find it blows the paint down. If spraying it on in low pressure, I think if a lot of people have done it or are into this game. If you're spraying at low pressure, I find that it gets orange peely on you. And I try to take away the orange peel with pressure. You all right, sweetheart? I don't feel like I'm going to use a filter, and the reason being is it's the hood hinges, or the trunk hinges. I don't feel like it's necessary. If it was necessary, I would. If I open the trunk up and you see a piece of dirt in the trunk hinge and it upsets you, don't look. You'd swear that I had a 1/2 inch of thread on it, but it didn't. I'm going to go in and paint that stuff now, or put a coat on it, that's for sure. I think it's been long enough. Hinges are the worst, because what happens is they hinge and they scrape when they go down and up, so it's kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't with a hood hinge or a trunk hinge. Hard to paint. First coat, let it set, and generally what I'll do is I'll let that set until it's, you know, if I can touch it with my finger, it doesn't have to be completely dry, but if I can touch it with my finger and the paint doesn't come off, I generally will put more paint on it. If I can touch it with my finger and paint comes off, there's no need of me going back in there and trying to put paint on it. There's no need. And the reason being is I'm just going to end up with a mess. If it's dry to the touch, then I go for it. And generally, the softest touch is with the back of your hand. You know, if you're pushing on it, you're trying to touch it, that's you know, you're aggressive. But the softest touch is the back of the hand. That's how I'd like to touch Jolene, with the back of my hand. All right, baby, huh? Jolene looks amazing today. She got a hoodie on, she got a mask on, and she still looks fantastic. But that's what I do with epoxy. I've got 3 coats to put on. I'll put 3 coats. I'll put all the paint on that I have. I'm not sure if there's any need if we want to carry on any further or not. But that's what I use epoxy for. And if I was sanding a car down, I was sanding it down and I went busted through the paint in a couple places, and I did not feel that I needed to fix it or repair it, there would be no need for me to put this primer on it and wait and sand it. What I would do is I'd go and get the epoxy. I'd epoxy a couple places of bare metal, and I'd paint the car. It'd be over with. I've saved some time. So you see how much time it took, other than the talking. I did quite a bit of talking this morning. I'm just giving you my belly button to epoxy it, paint it, rather than prime it, wait for it to dry, 220, 400, blow it all off, put in, and then paint it. There's a big difference. All right, everybody, thanks a lot for coming back. I appreciate it. Like, share, comment, do not like, subscribe. Come on back. We'll be here tomorrow, and the hinges will be painted. Have a good one, everybody.